Welcome back, Willie.
Uh, God, why do I put up with you?
We are back on our podcast. Last time our last episode was June 13th of last year.
Yeah, I think we've managed to dig ourselves further into a hole as a society.
Yeah.
Yeah, good times.
Our last episode was Earthquakes in Finance, and we gave a lengthy analysis of where we think the markets and the world is headed. And it's sad to say I told you so, which we usually don't like to say because
we're gracious individuals. That's why.
Yes, because those predictions have all came to life. But what do we know? So welcome back, everybody. We appreciate everyone listening, and sorry it's been over a year. It's been a very busy past year, and it's getting busier, but we felt that we need to get this podcast back and going. One, because we like to vent. Two, it's just good for outreach and for media friends to listen to, our own friends and others who want to listen to facts and us abolishing nonsense with this.
And world. Also because our therapists just don't want to listen to us anymore.
Yep, very true. So in the last episode, remind me, Willie, what do we discuss about in the Earthquakes in Finance?
Well, we talked a little bit about how the prices for stonks work, why you shouldn't just invest blindly in whatever stupid crap your newsfeed is suggesting as the next hot thing. I'm actually looking over my notes here. We talked about SPACs, I think, of all damn things. Those are imploding. Who would have thought?
Wait, let's talk about that first, SPACs. You know, we've talked about this before. I like SPACs, but the problem is actually doing it right? Because the issue, and I think one of our friends who was a former top executive at Blackstone was the one that created SPACs. And the whole purpose of the SPACs was, yes, it bypasses a lot of the lengthy process of what IPOs are. It bypasses some of the regulatory matters. But the problem is when all these Wall Street bros and all these other folks who are trying to get a quick buck and a path to least resistance, and that includes the private companies who think they're valued at 50, 100x in what they're worth, utilizing this SPAC route, and it's imploding now. And it goes back to our points about economic and financial principles, right?
Sure. Well, there's the problem with SPACs, at least, recently. So, like you mentioned, SPACs are not, the hot news section is. They've been around for a while. But, if you look at the stats, I think it was SPAC Research that provided these. In 2019, there were about 59 SPACs worth $13 billion total. 2020 was 248, $83 billion. And then last year, just at the start of the first half of the year was over 300 at almost 100 billion in valuation. Now you have to ask yourself, so from 2019, we have roughly 6x increase in the number of SPACs and about a little less than an order of magnitude increase in valuation. Do we have 6 times as many companies that are actually producing value, that are ready to go public, and that have a model that makes sense for them to go public? Has that number increased sixfold in the last couple of years? And the fact that SPACs seem to be imploding makes that a rhetorical question. Like, of course not. You cannot just keep, conjuring money and hoping that you'll find something to invest it on that's actually worth a damn. Part of that is just the 2-year window for SPACs. If you don't invest in something, you got to give your money back. And as we both know, on Wall Street, doing something responsible for money will actually make it so that you never work in that town again. And I think that's probably what inspired all of this just idiotic spending don't give the money back, for God's sakes. Then that'll make you look irresponsible. So let's protect your career by being even more irresponsible and throwing that money away on garbage that loses 70% of its value. Robinhood, within a year.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. And that goes back to the point of, what we always talk about, which is just doing things right and actually putting hard work in and actually building value, whether it's a company or methods of finance and economic principles. It's just, it's boring, but it works. So I just hate seeing a great tool and process in a SPAC, and because there's so few companies who deserve it, and the ones that deserve it are probably losing opportunities because all these SPACs have an expiration date, and it's they may miss an opportunity. So I hope they don't. But it's just another example of abusing something that could be great and has a purpose for that area and that vehicle,
right,
being abused by greedy, short-term thinking folks. And it's a real damn shame. And I think that's where, and that's where I think regulators, look, we both don't like regulation. Okay, like we both don't like regulation like everyone else, right? Overregulation is terrible, but we do need proper regulation. So there's a balance here. And I think with SPACs, there could have been some better oversight on that. And it's so
absolutely
funny. And it's so funny with politicians and with policymakers like the SEC on, I'm not going to call them idiots, but idiots. Sorry.
I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to do it.
I mean, look, I they tend to miss things that actually matter, and then they do things that don't matter. Yeah. Right?
And they take their sweet time to do nothing.
And they take their sweet time, and that's why people lose faith in our system when the system actually works if people actually do their jobs. And I think that's the clear message that I think people need to understand. Is just that is people shouldn't lose faith in the system. The system works. It's centralized, but it's for a reason. I mean, go back to 1929 and the Great Depression, and why we have to have some regulations. And then again, the next big one was 2008. Why we have these systems. It's still not perfect, but it's the best possible to protect consumers and investors. So,
and to perfect the consumers. The consumers need improvement.
And that's something we'll touch soon on crypto. But let's touch some of the other. Let's touch some of the other matters first. But
let's touch it all.
Yeah. So what else did we talk about?
Let me see. So I think we briefly mentioned the implosion of Archegos, or however the hell you pronounce that. Doesn't matter now. If a fund or a organization is broke, they don't deserve to have their name pronounced correctly.
Yeah, like most of crypto.
Yeah, corruptocurrency. Yes.
Yep.
So that was that happened. We talked.
I mean, I know we provided. I know we provided a lot of warnings too, which is ironic. Sure. And ironically, a lot of people disagreed with us when they listened, but yet all of it have now come true. We said there are earthquakes that are coming, and now we're in the middle of these earthquakes. And it's funny how people are so blinded by their own personal. I want to say greed, but egos and, living in the moment, which I agree with living in the moment, but you also have to live in reality too, of understanding what's actually happening. And basic principles of economics and basic finance, it is the way it is. 1 + 1 = 2, 2 + 2 = 4. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. This isn't a fictional, fairy tale like crypto. When dealing with actual finance and dealing with the economy, you actually have to follow these basic rules and principles.
Sure. I mean, that's the nice thing about recessions and downturns. If it can be said that there are nice things about them. I'm certainly not advocating for, crashing the markets and having millions of people lose their jobs. That always sucks. But when you are not having everything propped up by a bunch of fanciful, magical rainbow unicorn crap about, this is the future, we're visionary. No, you're not. You're building crap. And the nice thing about downturns is that crap gets its feet kicked out from under it and collapses on its face, which is what should happen. So recessions, I think, are kind of like the T cells in our body. We need them to root out all of the financial poison that some of these idiots have been espousing into the minds of innocent investors and people who honestly just don't know any better.
Right. Well, and it's just like, in every recession and downturn that we have, it's always the same groups of folks that always make the mistakes. And, it's just human nature. So, I mean, we'll touch on this later and how crypto and DeFi is trying to make a better system, because the current system, the centralized system is rooting everything and all that. That's completely false, right?
Yeah.
This is the best system that's possible. And all the economists and history will tell you, it's just the issue is human nature. Humans have flaws, and no matter how great of a system you make, it's going to have some issues. But the system that we have is terrific. And those folks that usually make the mistakes are, for example, Silicon Valley, aka human poo on the street, San Francisco. And sorry, I just don't like San Francisco. It's disgusting. The food is terrible. It's just nothing good about it.
It's funny because I actually talked to people who lived in the Bay, back in the, what we'll call the Dirty Harry days. And yeah, it was a completely different city from what we have today. It was actually worth living in back in the 60s and 70s. Just more proof that we were born way too late to be happy with the world at large.
No, I mean, it's a beautiful city with great views and a great atmosphere, but it's just a shame what the city has gone to.
It's lost its damn mind.
Yeah, but back to the point, if you look at these unicorns and these valuations, Silicon Valley, and then obviously Wall Street came on, like Tiger Global, losing their damn minds. All these valuations were just out of line. I mean, we've been sent many of these deals as well. When you look at them, these visionaries and all that trying to be the next Steve Jobs, it's like, hey, we support your passion and your vision and the work you want to put in, but my God, we're in reality. Does your product or service actually bring value? But then when you get those numbers and these investors, these VCs,
speculators,
all of a sudden make it like what, 30x, 100x, 150x of what is truly valued. That is
absolutely
disgustingly irresponsible, and they play a huge factor in the economic downturn, because that type of mindset is what's causing a lot of the issues, and also creating distrust. So it's just absolutely irresponsible on that part. And then on top
criminal.
of that,
it's
absolutely.
Criminal is what it is.
And it's so funny because both sides are hypocritical, because Silicon Valley, blame hedge funds in New York, which they're also equally to blame, because they're a bunch of, they're all coked out now, but they, they are, trying to make a quick buck and trying to find the least path to resistance instead of actually bringing value and bringing responsible capitalism to play. And they're also overvaluing ridiculously, especially in the public markets, right? They keep buying, saying, this is undervalued, when you actually look at the PE ratio and look at the P&Ls and actually read the proxy reports, it's not the case. And that's really irresponsible. And then on top of that, the grand of them all, government, right? And
oh boy,
last year,
I'm triggered.
Last year on our episode on June 13th, 2021, and even some of the previous episodes back all the way to what? To February, March.
Something like that, yeah.
We warned, we said that the Fed and our government needs to start raising interest rates and start controlling the markets, because it's going to create a much higher magnitude earthquake as we're seeing right now. And luckily there's no major tsunamis yet, but that could be on its way. I mean,
that's next quarter. That's next quarter. And, you know, the problem is kind of human nature, like you said, but it's also just the reality of finance and economics. Okay. Like, yes, I enjoyed my $1,200 stimulus check like everybody else. You know, it went right into my investing account because I'm boring and responsible. But, you know, the problem is that you can't just piss out a bunch of money and not expect inflation to happen. And it's hard to swallow that when we're in the middle of a horrible pandemic. We're still in the middle of a horrible pandemic, but that's a bitching session for another time. But it's easy to kind of get addicted to that idea of, well, government gave us a stimulus check before, why can't they do it again? We still have a pandemic, we still have high unemployment. You know, come on, you elected assholes, do your job. You know, we want free stuff. Well, that just sows a bunch of misery, which we're now reaping with some of the highest inflation that we've ever had, certainly in my life. The only good news is that it's not the highest inflation we've had ever. But, you know, the problem with a lot of these policies is that it takes time for the effects to be felt, right? You can't print out trillions and then immediately the next day see inflation spike, because that is going to lag your actions. And similarly, you can't raise interest rates and then immediately see inflation start to curb, you know, because it lags both ways. So why didn't they do it before? Well, because when everything's going right, nobody wants to hear that we've set ourselves up for failure. Nobody wants to hear like, hey, by the way, if we don't start doing something now, we're going to have out of control inflation. Oh, don't say that. Look at the markets. So 2020, there was down 30% in March, and it was up 11% by year's end. 2021, you could blindly throw a dart at stocks, which I think is how some portfolio managers do their jobs, and still have had gains. Nobody wants to listen to that kind of rhetoric in those types of environments. Now we're kicking ourselves in the ass. Like, gee, you know, all those pessimistic assholes were probably right. We should have started raising interest rates sooner.
Told you so.
Yeah, it's too late now. You know, we are reaping our own stupidity.
Yeah, and even Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen admitted her mistake, right? And to me, that's a big concern, yes. And I can see why we don't trust economists much. You know, because those who can't do teach. No offense to all my
and those that can't teach get tenured.
Yeah, exactly. My apologies.
But
to
Yellen
all
admitted
professors.
Her mistake. Yellen copped up and said, "I screwed up." Kudos to her. Right. That is integrity that you do not find in the public sector ever.
No, and a part of it is also political, right? I mean, the problem with the role of Secretary of Treasury is there's a lot of political issues with that too, right? Because you were appointed and hired by the president. So you kind of have to play a balancing game. I think for her, she was caught in the middle, unlike the Fed chair, Chris, because technically the Fed is on its own. Technically, you know, obviously they want to coordinate, but you know they still have to be separate. So I mean, there's a lot of issues there on its own that we don't know too much about behind the scenes. But you know, I do give her props for admitting her mistakes. But I blame a lot of this on the administration. I mean, you know, when they
both of them, this one and the previous, they both done screwed up.
Oh yeah, Trump and Biden completely screwed this up, right? I mean, look, I totally get the pandemic, is something that was unforeseen, and then this whole Ukraine war. I mean, look, I have to
Oh God, yeah.
look, I have to step in here. I mean, that was definitely preventable. The writing was on the wall. Putin made his warnings about Ukraine, and and the diplomacy from the EU, the UK, and the US completely failed, and this happened. So,
Yeah.
and our thoughts and prayers for the people of Ukraine, of course, but again, it's just failure diplomacy on that front. So we're not going to get into that because that's even more of a political discussion. But overall, these unforeseen things, yes, they exist. But at the same time, as we talked about last year, unemployment was still good. I mean, like the unemployment rates,
better,
yeah. I mean, they were improving, and we were adjusting to working from home and all those sorts of things, right? So, so for the government to pump so much more money and to do all these types of incentives and these handouts just didn't make sense. And look, sometimes you have to suffer a little bit in order to get better. And I think the negative impacts, if we would have stepped up last year, would have curtailed the heavy negatives that we're feeling now, right? With the inflation, I mean, with the inflation rate of what's 8.6% now, and
something like that. It's still single digit.
Yeah, exactly. And the way with gas prices are, gas prices, a lot of people say it's the war in Ukraine and Russia. Yes, that plays a part of it, but the biggest mistake that President Biden's made thus far was ending the Keystone Pipeline and completely shitting on the relationships that we've had in the Middle East and some other areas we needed to help with the oil supply. Because technically the U.S., we don't need other people's oil. We have so much oil as it is. I think we have the largest reserves, right? Technically, if we really wanted to drill,
I haven't actually looked. We have plenty. We certainly don't need as much.
Right. We have plenty. And it's just like minerals, right? We talked about minerals before. And that's another frustrating thing that with this administration is minerals.
Yep.
China continues to eat our lunch. And what you see now with oil, I'm sure you agree, we can see happening with minerals, right? I mean, these countries like China and others are going to completely hold us by the balls with that stuff. And then you see it again with fertilizer, and then with chips. I mean, it's really frustrating. We had promise with this administration in the chip making side. They were gonna, they had an act that they were gonna work on, and they're going to get funding to the chip makers like Intel to build domestically. But that also has stalled. And at some point, this is really getting out of hand. And politicians, I'm calling all of you out. You not only are causing all the issues we're seeing today economically, but you're also going to create even worse situations, the supply chain, when it comes to things that we really need, like energy, like minerals and chips. I was saying potato chips. I'm talking about chips that are needed in your phone, your computers, and all the things.
We do have a shortage of Pringles as well. We also need to solve that.
Oh God! I have a shortage of everything, including brain power in this country.
Oh, that's been declining for decades. But see, Vin, here's the problem with that is you can pass all the laws and acts you want. Cool. The Fabs Not Labs push in Washington, awesome. Because you know what? Yes, we do need labs. We do need really smart, pointy head people doing, I don't know, really weird physics-based stuff that I don't understand because I'm not in that world. That is absolutely critical to innovation and maintaining an edge. But we also need to actually make stuff. And the problem with with some of this push for fabs is that, it takes billions, and that's with a B, to get one of these fabs stood up and, most importantly, certified. Everything inside of it has to be certified to whatever standards they use. And that takes years. And I don't mean two, it's closer to like 10, the last I looked at it. And the problem is that we have politicians who have a 2, 4, or 6 year time window for giving a damn, because that's when they're going to get reelected, whether it's the reps, the president, or the Senate, in that order. And we have, as a country, all 330 some odd million of us have a real problem with looking at something long term, right?
Yeah.
It's who cares about 10 years from now? Well, you know what, asshole, you're going to care about 10 years from now when it's 10 years from now and we still haven't solved the chip problem, because you didn't see the value in investing the capex necessary for that long of a time frame. And these are the people that are voting. And you can't. Yeah, can we blame politicians? Yeah, that's
and also buying crypto, but we'll get to
that. Yeah, well, I mean, blaming politicians for everything should be an Olympic sport, honestly. But they are going to do what their constituents want because they want to get reelected, right? You and I may be the only people who would ever be elected to public office and then intentionally try to piss off our constituents by telling them the truth, whether they want to hear it or not. Like, we'll be the greatest one-term politicians ever. But if people don't fundamentally change how they think and realize that they need to zoom out a little bit, and life is more than just their own stupid little problems, we're not going to solve this. And Keystone, you know what? It goes forward. It's canceled. It goes forward. No. Stop with the nonsense. Stop with the glad handing, and say, you know what, this is more important than your stupid little complaints about the environment. Like, if you don't like the pipeline, well, you know what, go line up and pay $7 a gallon for gas, which is now a thing in California apparently. Yep. And deal with it. Okay, you can't have it both ways. Nobody asked for our opinions when geological forces created oil and minerals and put these deposits wherever the hell they are in the world. All right. This is the reality that we have to face. We don't want to drill. Guess what? We got to import the oil. Where's the oil coming from? Well, mostly the Middle East. A lot of it from Russia. That gives them something to say at the negotiating table, whether we want to accept it or not.
No, that's a great point. I mean, I don't think citizens of America, or American citizens, that's a shorter way of saying it, truly understand the power that each of us have, right? Because at the end of the day, these politicians are working for us, and we need to not forget that. And I don't care if it's these financial issues that we're talking about, markets, economics. I don't care if it's constitutional issues or lawmaking, like whatever it is. We have to remind ourselves that they work for us. And it is frustrating to see people's short-term thinking. And, I said it before, I agree with the whole live life to the fullest every day, live in the moment. You can do that, but you can also still have a strategic mindset of thinking long-term as well. And not forgetting your duties and responsibilities, not only as, whether it's a mother, a father, a son or daughter, but and your role in your job or entrepreneur, but also as a citizen of this country, right? Like, this country can't thrive without each individual truly, doing their duty. And it's not just voting, right? That's what people have to remember. Voting is a key part, but it's also having lively discussions and respectful discussions on both sides of the aisle or whatnot. So it's okay to disagree. And that's what's frustrating. And also, we have to also call out private sector leaders, right? And this is why I respect Elon. Elon, I know from engineering standpoint, you have some disagreements, but that's fine. But you and I both agree. Fine. Yeah, but you and I both agree. We have a lot of love and respect for him from a standpoint of taking his vision and making it happen, having the balls to stand up and do what needs to be done, and also being savvy. For SpaceX, for example, and even with Tesla and everything else, he was able to really drive pressure to create a partnership with the government. I mean, public-private partnerships are the beauty of this country, right? It's not fully public. It's not fully private. You have the ability to create partnerships. You went to NASA for SpaceX, and look at the partnership. It takes billions and billions to do those things, but look how it's working now. They have dozens and dozens of rockets now. They're going up, they're landing. They got the booster going now. It's a beautiful thing. And as we all know, every success you have in space engineering and in space innovation delivers us so much great consumer goods, right? And technology and innovation on top of that.
Absolutely.
So like leaders in other areas could step up as well and have the balls to really figure out and a partnership with the United States. For example, I'm not tooting our own horn, but we did
yes, you are.
back in 2020, where we got the last administration, to sign an executive order to support our efforts to loosen up, regulations against the mining and minerals world, to loosen up the ability to be more flexible and to gain more public-private partnership funding and support to be able to have our own supply chain and build our own stockpiles of these critical and rare earth minerals. That's Project Takeoff, and we're still working on that because nothing's overnight, as well with what Elon has done with Tesla and SpaceX. But this is more what we need, and that's why I get frustrated when I see Facebook and Google and Microsoft not doing more of that. Now, look, I have to give credit to Google and Microsoft; they're doing more, but these other companies can do a better job of creating these partnerships.
Well, they have to, because the simple fact is that the public sector and the private sector have completely different constraints that people need to appreciate. The government does not have to turn a profit. Okay, the government technically does not answer to shareholders except on election day. But the government, if programs are managed wisely, can afford to shoulder some of the risk that in the private sector you're not going to have the ability to. And you see it all the time with projects, especially in the nifty 50s and the 60s and 70s, when the cost reality of some of these really high tech, high risk engineering endeavors started to weigh on people's minds. You can't do everything privately, right? A company can't just spend billions and billions on IRAD budgets and not have to face the consequence of a shareholder meeting like, hey, by the way, you've spent $40 billion on R&D. Where's our brand new widget to show for it? It all failed. Cool. Well, we're going to vote all you assholes out, and we're going to put a new management who isn't going to do that.
Yeah, or you go bankrupt.
Or you go bankrupt. Right? Yep. That's the reality of private industry R&D. The government, for all of their many, many flaws, bureaucracy chief amongst them, if basic research gets funded and it doesn't end up being a commercial product, that's okay. I mean, NASA in particular have lots of projects that came to market later as a spinoff or as a joint research project with small companies. A lot of them just, three-man shops that are trying to create products and innovations that, in all honesty, probably won't exist in a huge mega cap corporation. Why? Because the small companies can take the risk. because NASA specifically have budget for this type of work. And when done properly, it's a beautiful thing.
Right. No, I totally agree. So to recap, there's so many issues that we called out from the last podcast that's come true. And we just touched on some of the things that could be done better. Now, where do you see the markets moving forward? Now, I know we've talked about mortgage rates, we talked about inflation, we talked about all that, in our private meetings. But to the listeners, where do you see things headed?
Straight to hell, honestly. So let's.
It can't be that bad. I hope not.
Well, I mean, let's get some groundwork here laid out first of all. So obviously, unemployment and inflation are going to be huge drivers in any economy, right? That's exactly what the Phillips curve is about. But I think people are being sold a half truth that is making them jump to conclusions that are not fully informed, right? And let's start with unemployment. So the present circus of fools in Washington love to toot their own horn about how low unemployment has gotten, and it's I think they quoted 3.6% on the last report, as opposed to like 6% in May of last year. And that sounds fantastic and all, but the simple fact is that they're not quoting the right numbers. Okay. Like there's actually 6 different types of unemployment measures. They're quoting what's called the U3, which is the total unemployed as a percent
the PC version.
The PC version, right? The total unemployed as a percent of the civilian labor force. This is the quote unquote official unemployment rate, right? This is what you hear on the news. The reality is that unemployment in May of this year was over 7%. That's the U6. Now that's the total unemployed plus the people who are marginally attached or, temporarily unemployed for economic reasons, or just are not looking for work. Right. The Great Resignation has not made headlines in a few news cycles. Let's bring that back. Okay. We don't have the 3.6 unemployment. The amount of unemployed people in this economy is almost double what's being quoted. Okay. So that is going to get worse as inflation continues to run unabated, because the only way that you're going to bring down inflation is with rate hikes, period.
Yep.
And when that happens, we're going to tip into a recession, and that unemployment number is going to go up because it has to. Anytime an economy contracts, businesses are going to look to cut costs however they can. And you know what? Maybe you can cut a couple hundred, couple thousand of your employees as a way to save money. We're seeing that already with the cryptocurrency companies who are rescinding job offers,
and tech, right?
And
Netflix
tech.
and
Oh, yeah.
those folks,
Oh, yeah.
And the crazy thing, just real quick, right? As you said, that makes so much more sense because, I've gotten questions before about, Vin, what do you and Willie think about these unemployment numbers? Because, everyone's going to Walmart or restaurants, or where they go to hire a plumber or electrician. There's a major shortage, and my family's restaurants are feeling it, right? And when we go out to eat, just last week I was, I was going out to eat at a nice Korean restaurant, and they had 3 servers for like probably 20 tables.
Oh, jeez.
And obviously I had to tip extra because I felt so bad because I know how that kid felt. But like it just shows you how bad it's getting.
Absolutely.
And it makes sense that unemployment is truly double because people aren't actually looking for jobs. And it's a shame because there's a ton of jobs out there, whether it's plumbing or or a waiter or grocery store, truck drivers, whatever, those are all respectable jobs. And it's just crazy to see that. But sorry to jump in there. I just had to make that point of like,
it's a great
people
point.
listening probably see it too.
Yeah, well, and it's a great point. And I mean, you mentioned plumbers. I know I told you a couple weeks ago. I just had I don't know what the hell it is. It's like a little U-shaped thing sticking out of the wall,
right?
in the house. I've been told it was important to the proper functioning of my plumbing system, and the guy gave me a deal because I had him fix that, rebuild rebuild 2 toilet tanks, replace the something out by the water meter that had run aground of reality. This is what had the joy of home ownership, right? And the wonders of deferred maintenance. But that little U thing sticking out of the wall, his cost normally was about $1,200. But he's charging $2,000 now because his costs of everything have gone up.
Yeah.
And he can charge that because he has to, number one, and number two, because there aren't that many plumbers here compared to before. And he ended up giving me a discount. Thank you much. Because I had a huge batch of work for him. But you have a perfect storm, not just unemployment, but you have people who are not looking for work. Okay,
and then supply chain issues,
and the supply chain issues, and inflation, and people are not, like I said, they're not being told the whole truth. The CPI numbers that you mentioned, the 8.2 or whatever percent, that's the core CPI.
Yeah,
that doesn't include volatile things like energy, which you can count that or not, but one way or the other, you're going to pay to heat your house or cool it. Like, it doesn't matter if you measure it, that's still going to hit your pocketbook. So the reality of the economy is a hell of a lot worse than people are being told. And I think you're seeing signs of it. Your waiter story is a good example.
Just go to the grocery store, right?
Just go to the grocery store.
Simple things are costing so much.
I paid twice for a chuck roast that I'm going to make tonight than what I paid for the exact same type of meat last year. I promise you the cows haven't gotten fancier.
Yeah. So do you see, the reason we call the last podcast Earthquakes and Finance is because, like, earthquakes, usually you have the either the volcano starting to go crazy, or you start to hear some rumblings, you start getting warning, you start getting some measures, and then you have the earthquake, and you have aftershocks. Are we in the aftershocks? Are we in the earthquake yet? Or are we
we're
hearing rumblings?
Up.
Okay.
We're warming up. I think
got it. So it's a warning.
This time.
Yeah, it's a warning that the volcano is creating a bunch of rumblings and noise. There's a lot of measure. I don't know what the hell they measure with, but you see in the news
science
sometimes,
stuff.
Right? Yeah. You see in the news, right? Oh, we had a rumbling here. The tectonic plates are are about to go crazy. So what you're saying is we are not hitting the earthquake yet, and our listeners should prepare financially, and
the pain
everything.
Hasn't even started.
Right.
It's not even the pain. Tingling that becomes the pain hasn't even started. I mean, are we going to end up like in the 80s with 16% interest rates? I sure as hell hope not.
Yeah.
But one way or the other, inflation needs to get down. The likelihood of that little soft glide, whatever the hell Powell called it, is getting less and less likely by the day. And now, I know Elon mentioned that there's at least a 50-50 chance of a recession late this year or next. I don't think it's that optimistic, but we've seen even the investment banks, who are traditionally, traditionally the most conservative non what was it, like non-hysteria inducing professionals ever are predicting, yeah, okay, there's an 84% chance that that we're going to have a recession. Like when banks are saying or making these statements that can have such a mass hysterical impact, you know something's wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
And
like it's not in their interest to spook the customers.
Right.
But
and at this point,
that's what's happening.
Right. And like at this point now, what I hate hearing is President Biden and the administration and some of the politicians blaming some of the private sectors, right? Like, for example, energy, right? That's just completely ridiculous. And they don't understand how it works. Like, for example, the Commerce Secretary and Biden and President Biden saying, hey, look, you just got to ramp up production now. It's like, well, you should have thought of that when you canceled all these licenses domestically to be able to do that. And as you and I both know, and for our listeners to know, getting drilling oil and getting these these areas going takes a long time. It's not an overnight thing, right? It's not like manufacturing where okay, let's go fix some parts and hire some people, get things going. Or if you're Amazon, you got bots now, right? Whatever. To be able to get these, they're not mines. What do you call them? These rigs going, these wells and these rigs going. It takes some time. So like you can't really, blame them either, and that's what's frustrating. So really, the administration's policies has led it to this point, right? And again, this is the balance of regulation and with the private sector, right? This is where we touched about it earlier with the SEC and with some other regulators, and with the Fed and with Yellen and everybody. It's people not doing their jobs, right? And not thinking long-term and strategically on what's going to happen. And now not only the market's suffering, but everyday people are suffering because of these poor decisions that are being made, whether it's at the gas pumps or in the grocery stores or it's their jobs or whatnot. It's just getting really ridiculous. So I just want people to know that, right? It's, your vote matters, and you're seeing it right now with President Biden and his administration, and his policies are failing big time. And it's just really disturbing to see. Now, some of it is also a trickle effect from the last administration too. Don't get me wrong.
Yep,
but
absolutely.
But this administration has just injected a shit ton of steroids and HGH to this poor situation, and it's going to cause an issue. And one more point here: we haven't seen the housing market either yet react. Right, you're starting to see it. You're starting to see it, right? You're starting to see these numbers. You're starting to see these data points that look a lot like 2008, and that's a big concern. Now, is it going to be a bubble burst? I personally don't think so. I think it's going to go down pretty hard, but I don't think it's going to be 2008. But I think it could be close, just depending on a lot of other key factors on that. Oh, and by the way, this administration too, foreign policy is horrific, and that's also causing a lot of these issues. When you piss off the Saudis, you piss off key members of the Middle East, also some nations in Africa and Asia, and not be able to balance some issues in South America. You're just causing a whole issue of supply chain that's going to get worse, and it's just really a shame to see. Because this whole thing, this righteous thing, look, I'm all for ESG, I'm all for doing better, but you have to be strategic and long term about it, and that's where they're failing.
Absolutely. And honestly, the administration are just a bunch of hypocrites, and the CEOs and executives of the oil companies won't call them that because they want to preserve their jobs. But since I don't actually give a damn what their shareholders think of my opinion, I can shoot from the hip and be honest. If
and full disclosure, we are shareholders of a few of them. So
fuck the other shareholders. But if the administration truly gave a damn about energy security, they wouldn't keep on this back and forth with Keystone XL. They wouldn't have let some of the most profitable leases in the history of DOI get canceled. And they would all then not turn around and blame the oil companies themselves for the increase in prices. Okay. Oil is a commodity. Okay. That means it's fungible. And that means your oil molecule has no marketable difference from my oil molecule. And when the price of oil molecules go up, the price of everything made from them goes up. Okay. This is not a conspiracy by Chevron and Exxon to, screw the American consumer or anything like that. This is the reality of their input costs, their costs of production have gone up because the price of their raw materials has gone up. And what do you expect them to eat that? If I'm selling you cupcakes and my flour cost doubles, am I going to put myself out of business because you don't want to pay more? No, screw you. You're going to pay more. And if you don't like it, go buy Sara Lee. Oh, wait, we both get our flour from the same people.
Yeah.
So deal with it. And as far as, people voting their opinions, that's absolutely correct. Okay. That is the beauty of a representative democracy. But when you look at the fact that the 2020 elections, some of the most emotionally charged, I'll say that politely, some of the most emotionally charged, elections in the history of our country, 66% of people, according to the Census Bureau, 66% of election-worthy adults who are able to cast a vote did so. So we have most of the country complaining and a lot less of the country voting. So if they want to blame somebody and they want to get mad at somebody, go give a finger to that person in the mirror because they're the ones at fault. You don't like
and actually give a damn.
Yeah, right. You're their bosses. Vote them out.
Yeah,
right. And accept the fact that there is no grand conspiracy to screw the American consumer, and it's not because there's no evil people in the world. It's because conspiracies take effort and cooperation to enact and to execute, and effort and cooperation are things that we do not have an abundant supply. Okay, like reality looks evil and it looks conspirational when it's turning against you.
Yeah, so people have to do their homework. I mean,
yes,
some of these lawmakers that we've met, obviously we're not going to name names, but many times I go, how the hell were you elected? I mean, some of them don't even know basic. Yeah, it's like some of them don't even know the basic finance or the basic knowledge about certain issues that truly matter. So our voters really got to step up and really start educating themselves on these candidates and understanding, what the hell do these candidates know and what they're, and what are they planning to do. So it's really, for example, we're shareholders, right? We invest, aside from our consulting firm on the advocacy side and crisis management, our holding company have large stakes in multiple different public and private companies, right? So as a shareholder, when you own stocks, there's some education for everybody. When you own
free
a stock,
education.
Exactly. When you own a stock, that gives you voting power at that company, right? Because you're buying stock, you're an investor in that company. That's what that means. So us as shareholders, you and I actually read every proxy material, every shareholder report, everything that the companies do. And we learn about the management and we learn about any changes of the management and we participate in calls and all that because we want to know what are they doing because their decisions and their numbers affect our outcome as an investor. So for voters and for citizens, they have to think of it that way too, because their money and their livelihoods are affected by that vote. Your vote matters. And that's what, so hopefully that helps people educate both from, get out and vote and actually learn who the damn candidate is. But two, as an investor, if each of you own shares in a company, you actually have a vote. So when you get an email hopefully not from Robinhood, but from Charles Schwab or Vanguard or some other legitimate brokerage saying, hey, you have whether it's Ford, Apple, whoever the damn company is, has earnings coming up and they have some, shareholder votes coming up, vote, right? Because that's going to affect your investment. And this is why activist shareholding happens. That's why, because the majority don't know better. So these guys have to come in and hold these companies accountable so they can do better. Shout out to our buddy Carl Icahn, the legend.
Our idol, my idol.
Exactly.
I'm going to get a little bust of him made and put on my desk. But you're right. There is no electoral college when it comes to shareholder votes. Like, your vote does actually make a difference. Yeah. And if you're not going to cast it, you do not have the right to complain. Yep. And also, just as a country, stop blaming people for being better off than you. Like, nobody put a gun to your head and said, I command you to be poor. Is your average person going to make the next Amazon? Probably not. But when you do nothing but sit on your ass and stream Netflix while complaining about the general state of industry, you are not actually making anything better. You're making it worse because you're contributing to the same inertia of stupidity and selfishness that made you complain about it in the first place. And, that's hard to swallow because I'm espousing radical responsibility and a personal investment in your own fate, which is not a popular opinion. Not that I give a damn.
I mean, that's what we teach our youth, right? I mean, when
we try.
I mean, whether it's interns or younger people that we meet or whatnot, we always teach them basic finance because K to 12 don't do that. We also tell them, look, pursue your dreams, always do that, but sometimes you have to make a sacrifice on the way, right? Whether you have to have a shitty job or whatnot. In the meantime, at night, you build your company, whatever it is. Stop blaming others and make it work, right? Then this involves every aspect of your life. So that's what people have to realize. Like, there's always someone out there that has a shittier situation than you do. So stop complaining, stop blaming others, and figure a way to work it out. And, there's a magical thing called Google. If you don't know something, it's amazing what Google can do. Right.
Well, there's Google, there's coding boot camps, there's Indian guys on YouTube that honestly were the only way I got through grad school.
Trade schools are practically paying students to.
Trade schools are badass.
Yeah, I mean, they're practically going to pay people to go to school because all these contractors and all these other companies that need these trade schools to produce students so they can hire them. Yep. All those sorts of things. So, just to recap, funny,
a lot of the
go ahead.
A lot of the people I follow on Instagram, I'm not going to mention names because I don't want to be that creepy guy. But they're welders.
Everyone on Instagram is creepy.
Yeah, fair, but they also hide behind anonymity. They're welders and fabricators for the most part. And they post all the time, like, here's a scholarship that, the same school I went to is giving out, here's an AMA with, what's it been like, being a woman in the welding industry or, being one of the few black machinists in aerospace, things like that. I mean, the opportunities are out there. He's got to earn it. I gotta say, I understand why people don't, because even just craft welding and hobby welding, which is what I do, is brutal, backbreaking, filthy work. Like,
sometimes you gotta do it.
I get why it's not more popular, but you're right. You got to do it. You got to actually work, and people need to understand. Dirty hands means clean money, so suck it up.
You have to earn. And even if you want to be a TikTok or Instagram star, right? Like, even I just met one of those stars, and even they have to put a lot of work into it, right? So all these
Right.
kids these days that want to be Instagram stars, or they want to be an entrepreneur, or they want to be a lawyer, or whatever it is, right? You have to put the work in, right?
Yep.
And also have to come to reality. Not everything is meant like everyone has a different journey, and don't look down on other jobs, right? But back to the Instagram star stuff, the amount of work that they actually have to put in is incredible.
50 hours of work for a 10-second video.
Yeah, I mean,
Something
it's incredible.
like that,
yeah. And the knowledge they have on human psychology and the platform's algorithms, and the amount of money they spend up front to be able to get some attention, the amount of that to pitch sponsors, they're always pitching advertising. So I have to give them a shout out, like, because before I was like, oh, what the hell are they doing? But
I had no idea it was that involved.
Yeah, it's very involved. So again, this is why I always remind, whether it's my nephew or his friends or whatnot or cousins, it's like, look, everything in life has to be earned. Whether you go to the gym, whether you go, to school, or you find a job, or you work, or whatever, everything is earned. But just take a step back to recap for our listeners. We warn about these earthquakes, right? So hopefully a lot of you.
But we didn't. We're not going to say we told you so, because we're gracious.
I think the biggest thing out of this podcast, before we jump into crypto and how it's Ponzinomics and how you shouldn't invest in it, and again, should not, never invest into crypto, is I think
especially not Terra.
Is I think a couple of things, Willie. I think people need to adjust their spending, right? Because what we see is we're just, like you said earlier, we're just getting into the worst of the earthquakes of this market. So people need to adjust their spending. People need to save. We always say, always have a 6-month salary worth of cash on hold. And then focus on, if you're investing, focus on long term, right? Because you're never going to have an overnight success as an investor. Focus on long term investments that create value. So, Vanguard 500 ETFs, other ETFs, other long term investments. If you don't understand investing, go to Vanguard, go to Charles Schwab, go, ask for advice. But the basic principles of finance and economics never go away, because 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 2 is 4. That doesn't change. So for our listeners, what we're predicting is that what you see now is going to get worse, unfortunately. But everyone needs to prepare, be very conservative with your spending, and save money up to 6 months or more in actual cash, because you never know what's going to happen. Because you're seeing layoffs and all that kind of stuff. And then if you have some cash left over, invest in long term. Don't do crypto. Don't do do short selling. Don't do all this crazy trading stuff.
Don't be stupid.
Just trust the long term investments, because that's what's going to save you. And don't use your home equity line of credit for bullshit, right? Like save that, because you always need to have those for rainy days, especially now. And even if you try to do certain things, it might be too late right now. Because I certainly wouldn't want to buy real estate right now, because it's way overvalued and mortgage rates are going up.
I would want to short it.
You would.
Where's Michael Burry? Where you got his number? I want to ring that guy up, see what he's up to.
Here, we'll tag him when we post this. Hey, Michael.
There you go.
We need to have a conversation.
Dr. Michael, I'm your biggest fan.
So, Willie, what other thoughts you have on top of that before we get to crypto and advice for our listeners?
Well, I mean, number one, hashtag not financial advice. But,
right.
The thing with bear markets, when everything's going well, when we're in a bull run, a child can pick a stock that has great returns. But it's in the bear markets that millionaires are born. And I know Buffett has said multiple times, when other people are greedy, you need to be fearful, and vice versa. Recessions are going to suck. And this one is going to be awful. Yeah. And honestly, I see the S&P dropping, not 30% like some of the articles today, but 20 seems reasonable.
Yep.
Well, it doesn't seem reasonable. It seems possible.
Yeah.
But, this is the time to actually screw them on straight and start approaching the markets with discipline and know that, yeah, you're gonna take some hits, right? You get in the ring right now, you're not fighting Little Mac from Punch Out. You're fighting Tyson. You're gonna get knocked the hell around. But guess what? It's gonna turn. Okay, that's the thing that you have to understand. Bear markets are not eternal. Okay, there is no such thing as a downturn from which we don't recover, because if there is, that means we cease to exist as a country, and we have much bigger problems than your 401k. So take your lumps, realize that even if it rallies tomorrow, it's a bull trap. Okay. The underlying fundamentals have not changed. So any uptick is temporary. We're still going to get our asses beat. And until inflation gets back down under 5%, nothing is going to change. Okay.
Right.
And 5%
and that might take a little while. Yeah.
And that's going to take a year. That's probably going to take a year. Oh shit. That's just been recorded for posterity. We'll see a year from now whether or not we're right.
So far we are.
Sadly, I've never wanted to be more wrong in my life, but that's the problem with logical thought, is that it usually prevents you or lowers your chance of being wrong. And I think that's a great segue into cryptocurrency. You have to adopt.
Just real quick though. Just real quick.
Yeah.
Our advice is for all income levels as well, by the way.
Sure.
Whether you're struggling check by check or you're wealthy, right? It doesn't matter. These underlying principles don't change. And if you're struggling a little bit, paycheck by paycheck, get an extra job, right? I know it sounds harsh, but sometimes you have to. Yeah, but sometimes you have to make some sacrifices. And remember, think long term, right? Yeah. I've known a lot of folks who've had to take 2 or 3 jobs, but they remained disciplined, right? They need to pay the bills, and after they pay the bills, yes, you can splurge a little bit here and there, like go out to eat or whatever, but they still saved and they invested appropriately. And then once the recession was over and we're back in the bull market, they really succeeded, right? Yeah. And some of them are even worth hundreds of thousands or millions now, right? So that's what people have to remember. And then if you're high net worth or middle income, do the same things, because you'll make out better as well. Because you don't want to make these mistakes now, because you'll be screwed. And speaking of mistakes, don't invest in crypto.
Well, I mean, look, the get another job, do something. Yeah, that sounds cruel, uncaring, but you know what, dude, you're right. And that's kind of the only answer. And, I know, you've gone through complete hell
and you have
to where you are. Sure. I mean, if people want to hate and say, "Oh, you guys are just assholes," you don't understand. Like, you know what? I drove a bus, and I worked extra board, because extra board is where you got overtime, and people who are in transit know what that means. And on my days off, I had other jobs. Why? Because my rent was 65% of my take-home pay, and I had student loans on top of that. And I had a powerful need to eat that month. And guess what? I had to get my ass kicked, and I had to sacrifice everything just to survive. And so people say, like, "Oh, you don't understand." Like, fuck you. I do understand. You're lazy. That's the difference. And that's the allure that I think crypto had for people, is you read and see these stories about, assholes like, "Oh, I bought, $100 of Bitcoin in 2010. And, look, I got this Lambo now from it. This Lambo cost me $100. Okay, that's nice. But the simple fact is that most of these platforms, if not all of them, certainly all the ones that we've interacted with, they only drive value because the token appreciates in price. And the only reason it appreciates in price is because demand increases, right? Somebody stupider than you bought the token after you did. And that's why what you're holding is now more valuable. And there's a word for that. I wish there was some way of describing a scheme that looks like a pyramid.
Amway. Amway.
Amway.
And what's Amway? Ponzi.
a Ponzi. Uh, and this is kind of cute. I love everybody that says, "Oh, you're an ignorant fool. This is like investing in the internet before it was the internet." To them, I have two. I have several things to say. The two that are repeatable in polite company. Number one, if you're so goddamn clairvoyant, why are you investing in crypto when there's a whole city called Las Vegas where your psychic powers can make you a lot of money?
Yeah. And Steve Wynn would love you to participate in his casinos.
Sure.
Shout out to Steve.
And number two, okay, yeah, you can invest in the internet before it's the internet, but everybody thinks that whatever garbage platform they're pissing their money away to buy is going to be the next Google. In reality, most of them are not even going to be the next AOL. No. All right, you're buying CompuServe or Prodigy, and God, I'm dating myself, but none of these.
I miss AOL.
No, you don't.
AIM.
Nobody misses AOL.
AIM was the goat.
No, it was ICQ. It was ICQ.
AIM. After schools, logging on to have magical debates. Bunch of middle schoolers and high schoolers trying to sound intelligent. It's fantastic.
Yeah. When ASL was a proper socially acceptable greeting, but we've talked about this before. The value is in the blockchain. Like I like.
There we go.
The notion of blockchain. I don't like fake bullshit coins that have terrible throughput for transaction processing
and no value,
that have slower on an annualized basis. Bitcoin actually has lower throughput than checks. Okay.
Yep.
The whole idea of NFTs I think are awesome. An NFT is it's a packet of data. People are buying stupid cartoon monkeys, but a packet of data that's secured by a decentralized network or a distributed network, I should say, that can be a mortgage contract, that can be deed to a house, that can be medical records, that
and
can
that's
be something
actual value.
That is actual value. And the concept of crypto is for financial inclusion. I like the idea. I think it's offensive that, we in America are the most powerful country in the history of our species, and we've got 50 some odd million people that cannot participate in the financial system because they don't have a traditional bank account. I find that offensive. I don't think, magical shit coins are the answer to that.
No, because they'll put them in a worse position.
Right. They'll be both unbanked and unhomed because we can't call it homeless anymore. That's classist or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, whatever the hell it is. But to take a quick step back, though, just a quick step back, people have to understand the difference between blockchain, Web3, and crypto, right? I think that's the misconception often, and look, and everyone's to blame for that, right? Because especially the folks that don't understand blockchain and Web3, they just call everything crypto, and then from a marketing Ponzi scheme standpoint, all these projects and chains just call it crypto, right? But what people have to realize is that crypto, here's a good comparison. These folks are like, oh, it's like investing in internet before the internet. It's like, okay, actually, no, it's not, because the internet, all these companies and all these projects are built on top of the internet, and the ones that are built that deliver value, the ones that succeed. Yes, the ones that don't succeed. Yes. Same thing with Web3 and blockchain. There are applications or companies or organizations built on top now of these organizations. And it just so happens that these cryptocurrency and these DeFi organizations are built on top of blockchain. And those are the ones that are failures, that are Ponzi's, that have no value. Down the road, that's what our goal is to support the innovations of blockchain and Web3 and NFTs, right? The pockets of data like that could be like mortgage and all that bring value, not the cryptocurrency. So I hope that makes it real clear for listeners to understand that that's the clear difference. So when all these people from Solana, Terra, Phantom, all these bullshit artists, right? CZ at Binance, all these people are just full of crap, right? Because they're just promoting their crypto, right? Because you need to have people believe in you to be able, like you said earlier, to build on top of the value. Because without people believing in these schemes, they don't have a Ponzi, right? They don't have that. So what we're looking forward to more are actually companies and organizations that are utilizing Web3 and blockchain with actual value. Stable coins and other things, stable coins with actual treasury backed assets. Okay, fine. That could possibly work. We'll see how that is. But the underlying message here is do not invest in crypto because it is Ponzi, but do look forward to Web3 and blockchain, right? Because there's huge opportunities there. And that's what you and I are waiting for, right? Because we haven't made invest more investments into that space until we see, these companies that are building value with blockchain. So it is frustrating that, the lack of education still. So hopefully for our listeners, this helps them understand. So whenever someone gives you that bullshit internet comparison, tell them that, like, look, it's built on top of internet, and then these other things are built on top of blockchain. So, there's been Ponzi's built on top of the internet, and there's been Ponzi's built on top of blockchain, which is crypto. What we need now are actual companies that come through that are building value, like an internet era. Google came along, right? So, other organizations come along. They're actually delivering value, software, all these sorts of things. So that's where the maturity of blockchain needs to go. Is now it's okay. Let's root out all these bullshit crypto folks that are building Ponzi schemes, and actually focus on actual technologies and real world value applications, and not metaverse or all this bullshit fantasy. And one last point I will make is for all the listeners is we actually have experience in this. So we're not coming from this from the
hard way.
Yeah, we're not haters, or whatever, from a standpoint of we're just watching. No, we actually had to live through it for about a year, and we learned the hard way, right? But
how many millions did we lose? Just
I don't want to talk about that. But
for those watching in TV land.
Yeah. So look, I mean, the best way to learn, but again, for us, we had the financial ability to do so. Okay, that's a clear thing. But now that we have the knowledge and experience and actually lived in that world for a little bit, now hopefully our listeners understand where we're coming from, and the Twitterverse knows, because they all hate me, where we're coming from. We have experience. We'll live through it. We met all these Amway-like salesmen, and CDO-like managers, like back in 2008, which are all full of shit. We had to go through all this. So we had to learn the hard way, and we experienced it. And now we're giving a warning, not only to our listeners, we love you, but we're also giving feedback to other investors and lawmakers now. Because the clear point to lawmakers we're making is please regulate cryptocurrency, but do not over-regulate or even touch regulation on the blockchain Web3 yet. Web3 blockchain need to evolve. So don't even touch that. Put all your eggs into regulating cryptocurrency, because that's where the problem is. That's where retail investors are getting fooled. That's where people are losing a lot of their savings, by the way. So people are getting hurt by this. And I don't know the numbers yet, but that's going to play a factor into this recession that's going to come. Or this downturn. And
use the R word. Use the
recession.
R word. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. So protect consumers, regulate cryptocurrency, but leave Web3 and blockchain mostly alone, because that's where the innovation will come through.
Yeah. And that's the thing, Ben. Like I really love some of the stuff that you could potentially do with blockchain. I love, the concept of zero knowledge proofs. I can be verified and whitelisted as, safe, not a money laundering asshole, but I don't, my personal data is not necessarily going to be vulnerable. I can be verified without being, exposed for, that's a really simplistic explanation of it. But, it's humorous to me, Celsius are hiring people to prepare them for bankruptcy, which at this point is inevitable. Do Kwon and his little,
he can go to hell.
Science project. No, he can't go to hell. He can go to jail. And I'm sure all the murderers and rapists in there are going to make it seem like hell. But, so Celsius at this point are going to fold. Voyager, I don't know if you saw, they cut their withdrawal limit to 10,000 since they revealed over 600 million in exposure to a crypto hedge fund that's also about to implode. For an ecosystem that prides itself on, screw fiat, screw the big banks. You can't centralize authority because they're taking advantage of you, and we're anti-fragile and blah 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 and all this other bullshit. It's funny they can't even survive a little downturn, a little run on the bank. At least banks are insured. They're verified. You're not going to see Jamie Dimon get accused of ripping off people for billions. Tara, you're not gonna have this this nonsense. And what else do you not have with banks? Well, you don't have rug pulls. I've never been rugged by a bank. You don't have Ponzi's. You have terrible savings accounts that don't yield shit, but whatever.
At least your money's there.
Right. And at least in this country, I can't say the same for others, but when I put my money in a bank, it's safe. I'm not going to worry about whatever warlord runs my state running on the bank to buy ammo or cocaine, and the idea of I can send money to somebody across the world for nothing or for very little, through this trustless system. Everyone keeps mentioning trustless. Well, if I can't trust you, why in the hell am I going to send you money? I don't want to transact with you. Screw you.
Yeah, we can't trust any of these people, right? I mean, all these DeFi projects and all these other crypto projects, you know who the hell is behind it, right? Let alone
we know who's behind that frog idiot. The guy that was an identity thief, Patlin, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, look.
A known criminal gets a second chance to rip off people.
Any of these people, they're not certified. They're not educated. Most of them are not educated in this world of finance and economics. So, there's a reason why we have, bankers that need to be qualified. They need to have licenses. There's a reason why investment bankers have to have FINRA and all that kind of stuff. There's a reason why there's so many of these regulations, and even still we have issues, right? But it's still the best system. And I hate the argument of, central. There's a reason for it. We're still capitalists. We still have freedom. We still have, the right to create banks or to create different firms or investment firms, all that. There just has to be some regulatory barriers to protect who? The consumer, the investor. And this is based off of history. There's a reason why the system is the way it is, because before 1929, before FDR had to sign that Banking Act, was to protect consumers from Ponzi's. Because before 1929, a lot of things were running rampant, right? There were a lot of things out there running rampant. There were Ponzi schemes, all this kind of stuff. So he had to sign this act that separated investment banks and actual banks, right? Because
I think it was Glass-Steagall.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I thought it was 33. But whatever. Not the point.
Yeah, during FDR's presidency, he signed this because the underlying reason was there's too much, let's say this, decentralization, right? Because everyone's running rampant. There's no protection for consumers or investors. And there was a high rate of people losing a lot of money through these Ponzi's. So they signed this act to keep investment banking and banks separate, because the banks are where people store their hard-earned money, and they know it's there, it's trusted, and it goes nowhere. That's why it works. With the investment banks, they have to disclose a lot of things, right? It's like, hey, it's your own risk. So that's why this current system works. And if you fuck up, it's on you. It's your personal responsibility. Because after all these restrictions and disclosures and knowledge and potential education, and you still mess up, that's on you. That's fine. That's the beauty of our system. But at least there are guardrails and there are requirements for people to do things, right? You can't just go open a random fucking investment bank and invest securities and all this money without FINRA licenses, without all these qualifications, right? You can't just
by design.
You can't randomly go to open a damn bank, but without going through a vigorous process, right?
Yeah.
And they issue a limited amount of bank charters for a reason, right? Yeah. So that's why those are there. And this is why DeFi and crypto do not work, because in history has already shown it doesn't work, and you can't trust any of this. And it's all Ponzi-nomics. That's what it is. Like they're so funny at how they want to innovate, but yet they're going back to the Stone Ages, right? Yeah. Technically, and it's really it's really disturbing to see. And I hope our listeners are understanding and are learning here on why you should not invest in crypto and why there's no protection for you, and that you have other ways of investing your money that actually deliver value. Because really, there's no value. There is actually no value at all in holding crypto. It produces nothing. There's no value. It's not treasury backed. There's nothing to it that does anything, and it's actually just harming society more and feeding into what we mentioned earlier, that short-term emotion, that short-term hunger, which never fucking works.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can understand why people are being stupid with crypto, aside from just investing in it. I mean, if you want a quick primer on how 99+% of these platforms work, go to Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, grab an extension cord and plug it into itself. All right. That's how these platforms claim to generate value. But
that's a very good damn analogy. Damn. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good.
It's like, I can understand why. I mean, look, would I rather have a Lambo today or a Lambo tomorrow? Obviously, I would rather have it today. Okay. But there is no way to build wealth that is not long-term. Okay. Yeah. And if, people don't want to look at it that way, and people don't want to think, it's like, gee, how did families like the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and like the Beers and, these big, just super ultra high net worth, mini kingdoms, fiefdoms, to be honest, like, how did these families amass so much wealth and blah? Well, it wasn't with, investments that claim 2,500% a year APR. It wasn't with, bullshit coins that don't have any value. People say that prostitution is the oldest industry. I would argue and say banking is the oldest industry. Otherwise, how the hell are the prostitutes supposed to count their earnings or keep them safe? We have an industry that has literally spent millennia optimizing and getting to the point that it is today. Is it perfect? No. If it were perfect, we wouldn't have needed the Volcker Rule. We wouldn't have needed Glass-Steagall. We wouldn't have needed the Sherman Act or Clayton Act and anything of the sort. Okay. It's not perfect, but it evolves. And I love the unofficial crypto model of, I think it's Virus in Numeris, the strength in numbers, referring to the cryptography and the distributed nature of the blockchain. I think that's an awesome idea. Obviously, when you have 14 and 15-year-olds forking chains to make their own little DeFi project,
which we've seen live.
Yeah, literally, high schooler. Just in terms of investor diligence, if a 14-year-old can duplicate or fork platform to make their own, yes, they could be an absolute computing genius, but that's not how statistics works. Most likely it's because what they're forking is fundamentally shit to begin with. All right. But what I am heartened by when I see people like Jamie Dimon saying, talking about blockchain and distributed computing, distributed financial technology, because that means, okay, the adults in the room are actually starting to get convinced. They've let all the idiots make the
that made us
mistakes.
happy to see that.
That makes me very happy.
Yeah.
Very happy, because now that means like, okay, now this tech actually has a chance in hell of being made into something useful. Like I can see blockchain being kick-ass for trade settlement. I mean, you go from T+1 to T plus right frickin' now.
Hell, paying taxes. IRS would be so much more efficient.
Paying taxes.
With
central bank currencies. The fact that, hey, goodbye dark pools. Goodbye worrying about order routing. I guess goodbye Citadel. The things like that excite me. Things like being able to secure your identity on a network that I'm not going to say is unhackable, because everything is, if I say that, some asshole's going to find a way. But, a blockchain is a hell of a lot harder to subvert than servers that are maintained by some poor, severely underpaid, IT schmuck that nobody even talks to because they don't view them as human. That's a vulnerability. Okay. Removing that type of vulnerability and making it cryptographically secure, that's awesome. There's so much potential here, and I'm saddened, not because we lost money. Like, honestly, you and I do so much dumb shit. We would have lost that money anyway.
But thank God we have our long-term holdings.
Yeah, but it's the people who didn't know any better and didn't have the ability to absorb that loss.
Yeah.
All right. It's like 2019 when people were taking out second and third mortgages to buy Bitcoin at 20K before it collapsed. Those are the people that I feel for. Those are the people that regulators need to step up and protect.
No, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And, I just feel that people are going to, trash us for this if the system doesn't work. But one more point I want to make going back, with the act that was signed by FDR, Bill Clinton was the one that
he neutered it.
Yeah, he did, and that's how 2008 came about. So this is again very important and why we need to vote better, and we need to hold our politicians accountable, because our system is still great because of how we came back, right? And we have more regulation now since 2008, but it just shows you why we got to be very careful in who we vote for, because 2008 probably could have been avoided if that was not overturned, right? Wasn't canceled by President Clinton. So that's another point to make is, again, it's not a perfect system, but it works because it evolves and it corrects itself with the right people in office. And
well, you mentioned reading prospectuses and reading proxy reports. It was my favorite line from The Big Short, when I don't know the actor's name, is telling Burry, like, what the hell do you mean you read them? Like, nobody reads them. Like, I think that's probably true even now. I don't. But again, we've learned our lesson.
But that's your personal responsibility, right? There's all these guardrails, and all these companies are required to send these proxy reports and these earnings and be transparent. It's up to you then to read and to understand. So. And again, not everyone has the time to do that. So that's why you got to put 401ks, ETFs, those work. But if you're trying to be more sophisticated and try to invest more in depth, you got to do those things. You got to earn your portfolio.
Getting rich slowly is sexy.
Yeah. I mean,
think of investing like foreplay. Do you really want it? You really think it's going to last 30 seconds and you're going to make anybody happy? Like, no, you got to draw that shit out. Just savor it.
Yeah. And probably you have regrets if it's the wrong investment. So,
the parallels extend to eternity.
So that's why it's so important. People, again, all advice we've given on this episode is everything is earned. Nothing is short term. You have to be patient, be disciplined, and look at the long term. And that's, at the end of the day, what people have to remember, especially with this turbulence. This further turbulence that's coming forth our way. People have to be very careful with their money and be disciplined. And please don't fall for crypto. Please don't.
Well, I think it may be a little too late for that.
Yeah, well, they can't say we didn't warn them.
And honestly, the drawbacks, several drawbacks aside from the most obvious, a lot of what could have had a chance kind of got swept up in the maze of stupidity and bullshit. Like you mentioned stable coins. I actually really like how Circle had theirs backed by treasuries, and they were making, I think they were making money on spread between the bonds or buying and selling, whatever. They were actually using like real financial principles and not just garbage. Like something like that I think is kind of cool. But what's the difference between them and every other shitcoin out there? Is all their stuff was 100% backed by something real. The PAX gold, the same. It's like I think like one PAX is 1 ounce of gold or whatever, but it's actually a physical, nugget of something that is held somewhere. Like it's actually back. And this is like, pre-1970s economic thought when we were still on the gold standard. But, when something is done like that, I think it's done responsibly, right?
Yeah.
That is cool. When something is, done by magic, and trust the algorithm. No, I'm not going to trust the algorithm, because the algorithm was written by some asshole that I wouldn't bother to injure to have him shine my shoes.
Now, if Milton Friedman,
my wrath.
Now, if Milton Friedman wrote one, I may go in. Milton Friedman. Now
that may be difficult.
Yeah. One of the final things I want to ask. I almost threw up when I heard this question. I want to get your thoughts. I want to get your thoughts on it. Someone was telling me, well, isn't the current system a Ponzi?
The current system.
Yeah, the current financial system. The current financial system, the banks, the investment banks, the government, the Fed, the dollar. The dollar's not backed by anything. Is that all Ponzi?
No, the dollar is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. That's what fiat means. It's Latin for faith. The difference between fiat currency and these little shitcoins is that none of these assholes are actually a government. A government has power, unlike these so-called visionaries. Government has power to create money. A government has power to levy taxes. A government has power to take away your freedom, and in certain cases, your life, in terms of capital punishment. None of these people have anything that even vaguely resembles that. All they have is a run of marketing bullshit to convince people who are stupider than their earlier investors to give them their money. Okay. Yep. The government exercises its power because it trades with other sovereign nations. There's a reason that the US dollar is the world's reserve currency, even after the Bretton Woods Agreement is not really relevant anymore. And that's because people trust that when the US government says this, that it's actually going to make good on its promise. The government says, we will buy this, we will enforce this. By the way, we have a really big military to enforce this. We
have actual assets.
Yeah, we have really large, maybe too large of a Fed balance sheet to back up our shit talking. Is that reducing the need for faith? Not necessarily. You're always going to need trust between two parties who are engaged in an economic transaction. There is no such thing as a trustless economy. There can't be. You have to trust something. Either you trust in the dollar that you're giving them can actually be converted to whatever their funny currency is, or you're trusting in the algorithm that's controlling the wallets or whatever. But there always has to be trust in something. Yes. So the anarcho-capitalist libertarian ideal, it's cute while it lasted. I mean, I think a lot of these people, they're like house cats, right? They go on and on about their independence and all this other stuff, but the simple fact is, if house cats didn't have somebody to feed them and clean out their litter box, they'd fucking die. Right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's absolutely spot on. Yeah. I couldn't believe the argument they were making. I was like, do I have to take you back to basic econ 101 on how this world works? And and another point I'll make is this is where our education system is failing. We teach we teach our kids everything. Well, kind of, but
no, not anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
reading, writing, and racism.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully there's some geology, geometry, history in there, all that kind of stuff. But I think there should be a mandate in where all K through 12 teaches, basic econ and personal finance. I was very lucky.
Back in my day.
Yeah, no,
when schools had funding.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say I was very fortunate to go to high school at State College Area High School. Give a nice shout out, Mr. David Williams. Shout out to you, and Mrs. Robin Verbeck. Mad love. They're
not going to give you an A retroactively. Just move on.
But because of the basic knowledge learned in just high school, right, was very helpful. So I think that would help a lot of people not only take care of their money better and learn how the basics, but also don't fall for the Ponzi-nomics, corrupt currency, crypto, right? So,
money can change, right? Like you can't argue that money's static. Like money used to be salt.
Yeah, look at history.
That's why we have a salary.
Study history. Right.
Money and God, I forget the civilization's names. The rhinestones, the big round rocks with the hole in the middle.
Yeah.
That used to be money. Corn and cattle used to be money. Like, okay, money can be ones and zeros. In fact, it already is. Yeah, I haven't used cash in years.
Yeah, I mean, we send each other Venmos, right? I mean,
sure.
People are using Venmo. People are using PayPal, Apple Cash, right? Those things. So, but again, it's a new form, but it's still U.S. dollar. So,
right.
I totally agree with you. It's not gonna. It can change, but it's just a matter of what it is, though. Like it's as long as it's still an actual value. Something of value and it's backed by something, then
and it's regulated appropriately.
Yeah, exactly. It's in an actual economic system.
Yes.
And I think we'll see that soon, hopefully, with the what do they call it? The central bank digital currency, CBDC.
Oh yeah, CBDC.
Right? Yeah,
could probably have chosen a better acronym.
Probably
the CBD coins.
Yeah, but I think. That would be a value if they can figure that out.
No, I have faith. I have fiat in the Treasury, or was it Treasury or Fed, whoever the hell's doing the research on CBDCs. I should know this.
Well, I think it's multiple groups. Definitely the Treasury. I think the Fed has some input, and I think hopefully not the SEC, but some other folks. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
SEC, I still love you. Just make sure to regulate crypto finally, Gary. Come on, Gary Gensler.
No, I mean, honestly, CBDCs are probably the next logical step. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know what that looks like for banks.
Yeah.
To be honest, obviously there's still going to be room in that economy for banking, but certainly account holding is not going to be the same. The financial inclusivity that all these jackasses kept talking about with their nonsense platforms, that'll probably finally be attained. That's a good thing. But no, it's gonna be real interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, and we look forward to working with DC and others to provide input. So we're looking forward to that.
If they'll have us after this episode.
Oh boy,
I think we've pissed off all three of our listeners.
I think, the government. The government, fellow investors, and the private sector. Yeah.
Well, the NSA is everybody's listener, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, thank God the NDO Fairness Act was passed. So, if you guys don't know what that is, Google it. Google solves a lot of things.
Yeah,
anyways,
we have a magical box of light in our pockets with the sum total of human history. Use it for something besides porn.
Yeah, that's what's annoying when people ask me questions where you can just Google it. I'm like, really? Like, you have to ask me that? Just Google it.
Well, if they want to share knowledge, like if they ask me an engineering question, I'm not going to tell them
for sure.
To Google is God knows what they're going to come up with.
Yeah, but I mean like basic stuff, right? Like,
yeah, like what temperature is it? Like, are you fucking kidding me?
Or what's in ice cream or something? Like, I'm pretty sure Google knows that. What's keto? Like, I'm not a trainer, and Google will have all the answers for you.
Right.
But anyways, any final words before we end our first episode back, which I think will probably be the best episode we've ever had?
Honestly, I mean, we took a sabbatical and the world went to hell. I don't think we should do that again.
I think we should keep going.
If we took any more time off, I mean, Jesus, what would have happened?
No, it's actually, you make a good point, actually, because so many people have actually asked us, what are we doing? And, what advice do you have? And all those sorts. So I totally agree.
I still have hope for the American economy. As Buffett says, never bet against the American economy. I mean, if we can, I don't actually get mad when people complain about, why they need, $50 an hour to flip a burger, or why they should have their student loans canceled after they spent $200,000 of my taxpayer money to go to law school and now are upset that, oh my God, you have to pay a loan back? That's unfair. It's like, oh, okay, well, I also worked full time while going to undergrad, so maybe I'm biased.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I still remain hopeful that we're going to come out of this hellhole that we're falling into in one piece. It's going to be difficult. I see a lot of pain ahead, and unfortunately there's no way around it. So
yeah, no, we absolutely will. I mean,
chin up, folks.
Yeah. I mean, the American dream is still stronger than ever. There's tens of hundreds of thousands of people or millions of people that would love to be a citizen of America and live here. Yep. The American economy is still stronger than ever. We're just going through some rough patches, but if you study history and look at the S&P and the Dow and the markets, and we always rebound. And that's what people, that's my final message is people shouldn't lose faith, right? Times are tough, but that's part of life, right? Life is a journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And in a marathon, there's always ups and downs, right? So you just got to keep looking forward, have faith, trust yourself, trust those around you that you trust, and just continue to learn and just earn everything, right? Yep. Anything is possible, just earn it. So that's probably the final message I have there.
Okay, boomer.
Yeah, I'm
younger than me.
Yeah, I'm soon to be 31, going on 61.
Jesus, 31. Wow, got shoes older than you.
Even then,
actually, that doesn't make a lot of sense anymore. That was funnier when you were in your 20s.
Yeah, even then, Social Security be gone. But
oh God, yeah, that'll be another episode.
Exactly. We'll talk about minimum wage, Social Security, and all that kind of stuff. All right,
my degens.
There you go.
Talk next time.
Peace.